Hi there, Vickie Kelty here. And as you can see, I have a lovely guest with me. Today is Zdenek joining us. And actually, we know each other through Instagram rather than YouTube, but that's okay. Everybody is welcome here. And I am excited because we are going to dig into his podcast. He actually has two, so you might have heard him on the Zdenek English podcast. But what we're going to be talking about today is his other podcast, the Footglish Podcast, which from the name you might guess that it has a little something to do with football and English. Put your two passions together. And yeah, so I'm so happy that you have agreed to come here and chat with us today. Welcome, welcome.
Hi, Vickie, and listeners and viewers. It's a real pleasure. I'm delighted to be here, and thank you for having me.
Yeah. The and I was going to ask you this earlier, but are you back in your homeland now?
For now, yeah, I'm in the Czech
Yeah.
Republic, or Czechia, as they call it these days, for some reason.
Yeah.
But
Do you
most
call
of
it
the
that?
I do now. I I've given up. I didn't want to. I was trying to fight it for a long time, but whatever.
That's what happens, doesn't it?
The issue is though that
So,
some people call it Czechia for some reason as well.
oh,
So
well, we'll
by
see if that
mistake.
one takes off.
No, that's
Oh,
a
by
mistake.
mistake.
Yeah.
And maybe that one won't take off. Well, mistakes happen. You might notice some mistakes as we're conversing along. So that is the reality of life. And I am currently in Spain, so we're not too far, same time zones as as we talked about before. But I did want to mention right off the bat that I am going to make an effort to say football and not soccer, just so that it has
Wow.
flow with it.
I
Yes.
have to say,
It's
I really appreciate that. Yes. I'm
it's
gonna feel
actually
much better. Trust me.
right.
Yes.
And then you don't have to like control your eye roll every time that I say soccer and you're
Hmm.
like,
Hmm. Hmm.
oh. I imagine that's something that's come up for you before. I only say this because I've had that experience with other people. I don't want to
I bet you have
assume.
in Europe.
Yeah. But so I am quite used to saying football, not only because the Spanish word is so similar to the word football, but just because it's the more common term in the world.
But what
I
if you have
guess
to
maybe you
talk
could say.
about football, your football? What do you do
Yeah,
then?
right. So so I actually go the whole 9 yards and I say American football
That's
when
what we
yeah.
would say here in Europe. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. I've learned. I've learned.
You've learned the
So
hard way.
when you're there long enough, I mean,
Yeah, makes sense.
but yeah, because if I say football, then it confuses everybody if I'm
Yeah.
referring to American football. And so in order,
It's
but when I'm in the States, I have to
of course.
like do right the opposite because then people
It's
then I
about
confuse everybody there.
it's about practicality, isn't it? Like at the end
Right?
of the day, yes, it does
Yeah.
like offend some people, insult some people. It's more of banter and
Yeah.
they're joking with you, really, right? Who cares at the end of the day?
Yeah. Yeah. It's like, what do I need to say so that people understand me more easily? And so I just go with knowing who I'm around and trying to blend in that way. So yeah, football. Here we go. Okay, so Footglish. I love that name. I love that. What do they call it? A
A
portmanteau?
portmanteau or a blend.
Well, that's
It's a
easier
blend of
to
two words,
say.
right?
Yeah, I like that, a blend. Nice
Yeah.
little mix. It reminds me of all those famous couples that mixed their names together. But I like this one. Very cool. Footglish.
Okay. I haven't done that
And
yet.
you what?
I haven't done that yet. Okay.
To to
To mix
blend
my name with my partner or whoever. I have to,
yeah.
I have to look into
I
that.
I tried to do that with my husband, but he has two first names and well, I just have one first name and I was like, how could we mix it? How is this going to work? So I
Yeah,
didn't come up with a good one yet.
since my ex was a Vietnamese girl, I don't know, like it might be something really weird. So
Well, the the opportunities are endless with these blending of names. But Footglish, I think, worked really well.
Mhm.
Like Spanglish or um, what would you do for Czech and English?
Chinglish,
Do you
but
guys
that has a like bad connotation, doesn't it? Because Chinglish,
does it?
if you speak Chinglish, that means like your English is not that good, right? That uh,
No, I
Spanglish
just
is the
thought of it
same.
as like
It's
no, I thought of it as a mix of I always use it as a
really.
mix of using some Spanish and some English.
But usually, what it means is in the English speaking world and in the world of English language teaching, in my opinion, is
Yeah.
like you sort of use a lot of false friends, and your
What?
own grammar of your first language sort of affects the way you're trying to speak in the target language, in this case in English. So it's
No.
actually something to frown upon rather than,
Yeah.
be proud of, in my opinion.
Oh, that's so interesting. Yeah, I totally defined it differently.
Okay, well,
Oh, you have me rethinking my life, Zdenek.
there
Well,
we are again.
I'm
Like
gonna dig
I
into
call it
that.
football, you call it soccer. So
The potato potato. We're happy with both of them.
yes.
But yeah, I am definitely gonna dig into that more. Just because my husband and I do use a mix of English and Spanish when we speak, but not like false friend sort of thing, just saying part of the sentence in English and part of the sentence in Spanish. So maybe
Makes
we need a
sense.
new term for it. Maybe
Yep.
we need to mix our names and create the term that way. I will stop with that. Okay, so tell me though, how did you decide to come up with this podcast of your teaching English through football through a podcast?
Well, I mean, it's a long story, but first of all,
Oh,
I've always been
grab the
into football.
popcorn, people. Here we go.
Yeah, I don't know if it's that exciting to grab popcorn, but basically, I've always been into football, right? Ever since I was a little boy, I always chased the ball, and that's nothing unusual. I think a lot of people do that, right? But of course, I kept my passion. I kept playing football for a team. No, I wasn't that good. I mean, I thought I was, but never. I was never good enough to make it to professional football, right? So yes, I was a registered player, played for a club, and all that, but that was about that. And I always watched football, always like to talk about it, always sort of socialized with my friends whenever there was a football occasion or whatever. And then I became an English teacher. I graduated from a school. And I'm this sort of guy that I don't always sort of follow the crowd. I sometimes go against the grain, I don't always jump
Mhm.
on the bandwagon,
Yeah.
so to speak. So it's kind of in me to try to be a little bit different. Don't know if it's some sort of like I'm rebelling against society or whatnot, but it's in me. Yeah. So as a teacher, I don't always follow the sort of the not the guidelines. That's the wrong way of putting it. I like to
Well,
implement
like
my
the
own.
norm
I like
or
to implement
what
my
the
own.
rest of the teachers or society might consider a norm or
Yeah,
tradition.
like I can still use the course book and all that, right? But I like to
Yeah.
sort of implement my own ideas
Yes.
if it's possible. So
Make it
I
your
have
own. Make it Zenic.
exactly. So those of you watching this on YouTube, you might see behind me, I've got a lot of board games here. So it's one of my passions, board games. And so I've done that many times in my English classes. I brought the games in and I built lessons around board games. I even created lesson plans and I went even very far with that. I even a course and stuff. And
Oh my
with
gosh,
food,
I
yeah.
love that.
But that
I am a big, you can't see the wall of board games that we have here on the right. So yeah, that's awesome.
so
Very
this
cool.
is doable in the classroom with the board games. I think it's doable, and
Yeah.
I can convince most people. But with football, it's not that easy, right? Because not everyone is into
It's
football.
interesting. Well, I mean, and I would go so far as to say not everybody's into board games. So I do think that takes a bit of
True, true.
and the idea of learning through playing the game. So are you finding that to be
It can be a challenge.
uh
Yeah, you're right.
yeah.
Yes, but
So
then
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 with
you have
football, you
with the
have the
games
same
like
thing.
you have to make some decisions. You have to choose games which are easy to learn, not so
Mm-hmm.
intimidating, and there is a
Yeah.
way to do it, and there is always some sort of language outcome. With games, it's
Yeah.
doable. I found a way, and yes, you're right, it doesn't always work with everyone, but at least they're willing to give it a chance, the students. With football,
Sure.
like I didn't even try, to be honest. Like in the I mean, yeah, sometimes I sort of
Really?
like, well, yeah, I have like a small talk with my students, but that's about it. I can't.
Yeah.
Did I ever have a topic of football in one of my lessons? I doubt it.
You're like, did I?
I may have
Well,
done.
now.
I may have done, but not like I can't talk about football every single lesson, which is what I would love to do, of course. So
Right? Yeah.
yeah.
I
So
now I don't know how you would feel about this, but if I had to choose one for myself, I would definitely talk about the TV show Friends for
mhm.
every single lesson if that was something that but sometimes people haven't seen it or they hate the show or and so then that one is and it's like getting older and older with each year. So it's harder to keep it relevant. So I
Yeah.
can totally understand that.
And then there's this factor of you kind of like imposing your hobby or your interest onto them, so it doesn't always work. Like if you're so excited about something, like let's say you really liked a film and then you're like, hey, you really must watch this film. Sometimes it actually does the opposite. It has the opposite effect on the person you're trying to convince to watch it. They're like, oh no, I'll definitely not watch that then. you know
I am that kind of person.
yeah.
It's horrible, but for me, I get nervous that I'm going to be let down because they
Yep.
hype it up so much and I'm like, "Oh, I don't want to be disappointed.
Exactly.
I'm just not going to watch it just in case."
Yeah. And so, long story short, of course, COVID happened, and I sort of started flirting with the idea of teaching um, online. I, got a few students here and there, and so I tried to come up with some ideas there. And first, the board games, they didn't really work that well, to be honest. Like there is a way to do it. There is a PC game
Because
called
you had been
Tabletop.
doing those only in person exclusively
No,
previously.
I've done some online as well.
No, I mean before COVID.
Yeah, yeah. In a classroom, in a real classroom, like full of students.
Gotcha.
I've done it. I even went to the UK. I worked in the UK at summer camps. It worked really well there. Because
Oh
with,
yeah.
with teenagers, it works a little bit better.
Oh
I
yeah.
did I did it with
They're an easy sell with those
that's
board
right, but I
games.
did it with adults too. But
Oh
going back
yeah.
to going back to the online thing. So with board games, like there is a way to do it, and I tried because
Yeah.
there's a platform called Tabletop Simulator, which is pretty good. But there are too many the curve, the learning curve is too much, with all the technology, then you have to explain everything, tutorials, it's too much for people, and
Yeah.
sometimes less is more, right? In
Totally.
general. And if there are too many hoops to jump through, it doesn't always work. And so
Yeah.
that was the obstacle I ran into with board games. So instead I tried the football thing now.
And here we are. Voila.
Yeah.
Now, the um the idea of learning through a passion, which you've touched on in multiple ways, do you think that that is a an effective way to learn through languages or learn languages through? And why? Why do you think that that works so well?
My answer will be I don't understand how anyone can learn in any other way, to be honest.
Yeah.
Honestly, like
And
if
the
you
end. There you
yeah,
go.
because like if you pick any generic course book, and there are a lot of good course books, and I've used them before, but imagine you pay for a course, and then of course the teacher, like they cannot talk only about football. Usually they're gonna pick or choose the language school will choose a course book, and this is what everybody has to use, right?
Yeah.
And then the topics are hobbies, family, environment. Of course, if it's like advanced, then the topics are maybe more advanced, but still, it's generic topics. There's not gonna be much controversy, not like they're gonna
Yeah,
avoid
not really digging in deep on
yeah, they're gonna avoid
specific
topics
things.
like alcohol, religion, and all that. So the interesting topics that
Politics.
that might politics, yeah, it's avoided, right? Because
Yeah.
that can lead to problematic stuff. But actually, for me, this would be more fun or more interesting. It would,
Zdenek's like, mine would be all the things that they wouldn't put in that book because
yeah, of course,
they're too taboo.
yes. So, why am I talking about this? What?
because because you were talking about how our
Right.
hobbies are passions. Yeah.
Yeah, of course. Right. So this gets boring and repetitive and it's just so dull, right? So
Yeah.
basically, if you can learn through something you're really into, something that you're really passionate about, you forget that you're learning. You probably do it in your first language already anyway. So you have got a lot of sort of, a lot of context. And with the idea of football, so you watch those games anyway. Maybe if your first language is Spanish, you watch a football game with a Spanish commentary, right? And so you would do it anyway. But why not turn on the English commentary or find a stream somewhere or, you know, pay for a service where there are English commentators, and then you can kill two birds with one stone, right? And then basically, uh, before you know it, you suddenly can speak English. I mean, it's not that easy, but if you do this for a long time, consistently, like you get a lot of exposure, and it's just it's good, like because it's your motivation is really high.
Yeah. And then it really is that ease that because I think that although it takes time and it takes effort, it feels easier when it's something that you're really excited about. Like I play a friend, I'm looking over to the right because it's sitting over to my right, but I play a friend's Trivial Pursuit game with myself because nobody else knows the answers or knows the show well enough to play with me in my household. I mean, and it's in French, and in theory, it's way too difficult for me. It's not like my quote unquote level, but because it's something that I am so excited about that I make that effort to try and figure it out and work for it. And I don't know. So it feels not difficult, even though in reality, like it is challenging, but it doesn't feel like that. Do you know what I mean?
It's like you're learning by playing, it's like little kids.
Yeah.
Why do they all learn so fast? How can they be such a sponge and like uh, get so much
Yeah.
knowledge into them so quickly? How is that even possible? Like from zero, from nothing. How is that? Well, but they're curious about the world. They are trying to work
Well,
it
yeah, and they
out,
don't
right?
overthink it.
They don't overthink it. It's not,
Mm.
and then it gets worse at school, right? That suddenly it's it's more problematic.
And then we just
Maths,
suck that
it's
fun out of their lives.
it starts getting a
Oh,
bit dodgy. But like it doesn't happen when you're pursuing when you're learning a language through your hobby, because it's something you
yeah.
love doing, right? It's your passion. It's like it feels like a game. You're playing a game
Yeah.
basically.
And is that what learning because okay, let me ask first. Do you feel that you got to where you're at with English partially through football?
That's a good question.
Thank you.
I'm not sure. I
Well,
don't think so. I should be saying yes now, right? it would
okay.
it would sell
No.
better. It would sell better. Well, I'm an English teacher, right? So,
Yeah.
um, I
Well, how about before you came an English teacher? Like before you took that step when you were just, I mean, this is really having to dig back
let's say this
because
is one of the contributing factors, right? So because like I used to live in the UK before I went on to study English teaching at university, and I worked on a construction site. Yeah, you are right. Sometimes we did talk about football with
okay.
my
So did you
co-workers,
make,
but it's not
yeah,
just
the
that.
connections with
But
people?
you exactly, like this is why football is so great, because It's universal. Sometimes you don't even have to speak the language very well, but you can talk about Messi, Ronaldo. Everybody knows who these are, right? And that's so easy to bond with people, so easy to make
Yeah.
friends. And even if they don't support the same team as you, then there is banter, right? You sort of
Right. Yeah.
tease each
Yeah.
other,
Yeah.
and it's fun. You sort of wind
Yeah,
each
I
other up,
found
and
it's created a lot of conversations in Spanish for me by
yeah.
knowing different things about football here that I almost said the wrong term for it. It was on the tip of my tongue. I edited it. Football.
Okay.
Saved myself. But yeah, the number of conversations I've been able to have because I would go in and I'd be like, "Oh, did you see the rerun of Friends today?" And I'm like, "No, wait, Vickie, why don't you ask about the football game, like the really important one that was on the other day? Maybe that will create more." And it did. It created more
It is, yeah.
conversation. And
And
yeah.
you cannot believe how many times I sort of got talking to Vietnamese people, because I used to live in Vietnam as well. Last year I was in Vietnam, and
Yeah, that's why I was asking because I
yeah,
when I messaged you for some reason I thought you were still there. So
I'm going there again in 20 days. I've got a ticket
oh,
now. I've
see, I
booked the
knew.
ticket actually. So yeah, I'm going back. But what I wanted to say is that in Vietnam there's this service. It's like a taxi where somebody takes you on a motorbike. You book a motorbike on an app, and then the vast majority of people cannot really speak English, but they use words like okay or good, and stuff like that. Hello, they can do that. But still, we could have some conversations about football, right? Because they see maybe I was wearing an Arsenal shirt like I'm now, or something, and they start mentioning the players that play for Arsenal, or they say I City, I support City, right? And there you have it. There's a
Oh,
conversation, and they can't even speak English. It's
yeah.
like they're barely A1 level, right? And it doesn't matter, because
Yeah.
it's sort of, how you have this barrier sometimes, this language barrier and fear, and it's very common in Asia, by the way.
Oh,
Sort of
really?
this, because this embarrassment of not being good enough and making mistakes, and it's a face culture, right? Well, when it comes to football, it's like almost this disappears completely. Yeah,
Oh, and see, that's it. That's what you're looking for when you learn a language is for that like perfect thing that gets the fear to
exactly.
disappear. Oh, I love that. Now, walk us through how your Footglish podcast episodes are kind of set up. Because I know that there's like the entertainment value and the educational value both mixed in there.
Yeah, well, so usually it's a dialogue with me and my guest. And this could be one of my friends who can speak English. It could be another podcaster or a journalist, or sometime occasionally I invite some people who are, let's say, known from TV or something one day. Hopefully some
Wow.
footballers as well, but that's harder, right?
Yeah, but that's so cool.
Yeah, and we have a conversation about usually the recent game of their team, right? So if I invite someone who supports Manchester United, I'm probably going to talk to them about the last Manchester United game, because that I know that's going to be easier for my guest, and because I have probably seen at least the highlights, if not the whole game, because I watch a lot of games. So
Yeah, I'm sure.
it's very easy for me to have a conversation with that person, and that person is eager to talk, because it's they don't see it as a job. It's fun, right? They love, they would talk about football with their mates anyway. So that's a win for me
Just
as
another
well,
day.
and hopefully the listeners enjoy that, and so they have listening practice, right? Obviously, um,
Totally.
if you're into football. Otherwise, if you don't like football, then you probably don't get as much from it, right? Because you know,
Well, but you could be doing a Vicky where I improved my like I knew about football before coming to Spain. I had played football in Nebraska. as a child. Panthers championship game. I did score a goal for the other team, but whatever. These things
You mean
happen.
you scored an own goal or something?
Yeah.
Don't worry, it happens. It happens to the best of us.
Have you done it before? This is
It might have been a deflected
confessions.
because there's a difference between an own goal and a deflected shot, So I don't think I've
Um,
scored an own goal,
oh no,
but
mine was
I
definitely owned.
actually, yeah, I think once. I think it happened
Okay.
once, yeah.
Oh, I'm
But a
not
lot of deflected
alone.
shots as well. That's quite common in football. So
Yeah. So what, just for reference, a deflected shot would mean that, like, how would you explain that?
basically, if let's say the striker shoots, right, then if the ball is going in the direction of the goal,
Mhm.
then often what happens is that there is a defender in the way, and the ball sort of uh,
Like
directs
hits
itself,
them or
hits
something?
hits them, and then it makes it much harder for the goalkeeper to catch it. So it's a goal very often.
Oh,
But
gotcha.
as
So
long
that's
as
not really an own goal in that
it's not an
way.
own goal, because the shot
Gotcha.
was aimed. The shot was clearly, the trajectory of the ball was clearly going in the direction of the goal. But the
Mm-hmm.
typical own goal is if there is a cross, from one of the wingers or something, and
Yeah.
then they are trying to cross the ball and find the target man to score the goal, but instead there's a defender who clumsily puts it into their own net, which happens it happens very often. It's quite common. It's a
Yeah.
common goal, actually.
Good.
At the latest
Cool.
at the latest
Pat myself on
Euros,
the back.
at the latest
At the latest
Euros,
what? Sorry.
the Euro,
Oh yeah.
yeah, we just had the Euro. Spain won it, right?
They did indeed.
It was
Thank you
hosted.
for
It
the
was hosted
I
by
I act
Germany.
like I played a part in it. Thank you very much.
There was this running joke because for a lot of time, when they were showing the top goal scorers of the tournament in the group
Oh
stage,
no. Yeah.
the 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 the, the top goal scorer was the own goal. So it was like a running joke, right? So the own goal scored 9 goals, whereas I don't know, Mbappe or whoever was there, Mbappe actually was quite bad this time.
Yeah, he had
Musiala was
something
there.
happen that he had a like guard on his face or something. He'd like broken his nose or something, didn't he?
Yeah, that's the excuse he can have. But to be honest, like, he was just poor. He was just bad. Yeah,
Well, but definitely having like a face guard gives at least, a visual excuse for people as
it's a
well. Not like a
mitigate.
headache
Yeah,
where nobody can see it. So,
yeah, but I think he has gone down with his performances as of late. I would say he's,
yeah.
yeah, not at his best right now. I would say in the latest, in the
Well,
last
as
few
they say
years.
in
But
Spanish, animo. You can.
he's
I
definitely a
always just
great
say
player, by
animo
the
because
way.
I don't actually know what we would say in English for that. I'm like, you can do it. That's probably what we'd say.
No,
You
he's
can do
definitely a
it.
great player, though. But it's just with the
Yeah,
talent
better
he
than
has,
me,
and
but
with the sort of stature he has in football, you would expect more from him. Yeah, I think he scored only 1 goal or something. But anyway, so that's what happened. A lot of own goals were scored. Yeah,
yeah. So right up my alley. But I don't why was I even mentioning that I was playing in Nebraska? I can't even remember what I was saying before that. Just like tangent over there. That typical Vickie, own goals and tangents. That's what I do. It's what I'm known for. Thank you.
don't worry,
But
I understand more
yeah.
than you might think.
So I'm sure I had something that I was some point I was trying to make with my soccer reference. So even though I can't remember exactly where I was going with my point, I know that there's also a learning element to the podcast.
That's
There's
right.
also
So
that.
like I said, like it helps you develop your listening skills, which is kind of like any podcast, right? Yours, anybody's
Yeah.
podcast in English, as long as you speak in a clear way, I think it helps English learners. But with this
I just
pod,
remembered. I
yeah,
remembered what I was going to say. It is that the podcast, because I didn't know a lot of Spanish terms for football. And so if I'd had something like a podcast to listen to, because I just watch some games with my husband or listen to commentary and that stuff, but a podcast would have been a fabulous way for me to get those terms as well. And even though like I love football, but I wouldn't say that I have the passion for it that like you would have for it. And even still, listening to those podcast episodes like the ones you have, I find them so entertaining because I was listening to you and Luke talk about the Euros. And like, I think that that can really give somebody information so that they could talk about football with somebody in the future, even though it may not be their exact passion. That's what I was going to say. So if I was the opposite and English was the language that I was learning right now, I would find that really useful, even though it isn't my passion. But so
Well,
now
that's the idea behind
onto the
it.
English part.
And yeah, so first, like there's the interview, and then after that, I have a bit or let's say segment called the language corner.
Oh, I
So
love
which
the name.
such and
I love all the
self-important.
names that you've chosen for everything.
I mean, it's a bit funny, but yeah. Anyway, this is
That's
where I wonder if my listeners even want that bit. But basically, I try to explain some vocabulary from the episode. Yeah, sometimes grammar, sometimes pronunciation. This is where I'm the teacher, right? Because I believe the first part it can be done by anyone in a way, right? Any Tom, Dick, and Harry could record episodes like that as long as they are into football, right? But I'm an English teacher, so I have to show what I can do as a teacher a little bit, yeah, showcase my sort of teaching skills, right? So that's why
it's like what was Beckham known for? Or I just say Beckham because I was thinking of the movie, which I never saw
Bend it like
actually.
Beckham, right? It was
Yeah,
cool.
and I was like, I guess he
Yeah.
was known for because I saw somebody do some kind of
Bending.
like backwards kick thing the other day when I was watching football, and I was like, ooh, that was fancy, but it didn't work out exactly how they'd planned, and it didn't. Yeah, it was just a complete flop. But I was like, well, if they could do that skillfully, then that would be, you know, their ta-da showcase moment. So this is your like little skillful
And I have to, right?
move that you
Because
do.
I have to do this because otherwise, like, anyone could do this, as I said. So I tried not to make it too long because I think that the main meat of the I apologize to all vegetarians for what I've just said. The main meat of the show is still the interview. I think is the most interesting part, but the language bit is sort of like to maybe explain some vocabulary that I consider a little bit more advanced, potentially. You know, the listeners
I like
might
it.
not
I
know
like
it,
your little language
and some
corner.
idiom, usually some idioms or something like that. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Everybody loves a good idiom. They,
Mm-hmm.
well, after you've gone and listened, either comment on Zdenek's podcast episode or you can travel all the way back here and comment here and let us know your thoughts on the language corner. Are you staying and listening? You should. And are you finding it value? What would you like more of with it, or what would you tweak about it? I mean, I'm going to just speak for Zdenek. We love to hear people's opinions and insights. Tell us more.
There's never
But
enough of
yeah,
those because like most
yeah,
people listening to any podcast are what Luke
yeah.
Thompson from Luke's English Podcast calls the ninjas, right? They are
Oh.
just quietly listening and never come out of the shadows.
That's a lovely little analogy. Um, I guess I probably am a bit of a ninja podcast listener unless I know the podcaster and then I don't comment on their podcast, but I do talk to them and say,
Yeah,
"Hey, I listened to your podcast the other day, this episode of blah blah blah." But what about you? Are you a ninja listener?
I'm not. I'm definitely
Oh,
not.
you comment
I
and
think it's
stuff.
because I'm an extroverted person and I like to connect with even with the podcaster, and I think I can do it. But what
Yeah.
I will
Well, I
say
mean, I
is that
reach out to them directly, but I don't comment on their podcast. Do you know what I
right,
mean?
yeah, I might do both. But what I will say is that for us, the people who have the podcast, this is, you know, it's such an important thing to even get some
Yeah.
sort of engagement because if we don't,
Agree.
the algorithm is going to eat us alive. We're not going to get the
Yeah.
views. We're not going to get recommended by YouTube. So we need those comments and those likes.
Yeah.
I know we sometimes ask for it in an annoying way, right? At the end of the podcast, but we do it because this is the only way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's something that people who as a listener, as a ninja listener, maybe they don't know. So that's really great that you have shared that because I mean, I know that in theory, but sometimes I don't think about it myself. So I will go and leave a comment on the next podcast that I listen
On
to.
your own podcast, even you can.
I will. Actually, I usually do comment on the stuff that I just to try and get the ball rolling, you know?
Yeah.
Oh, does that count as a football expression? Get the ball rolling? Or is that
Of course,
a
of
different
course.
sport?
But that's so you have football expressions, which like idioms and phrases, which are used
Yeah.
specifically in football. But to get the ball rolling, it's an
It's
expression
too
from
general.
football, which actually entered the general vocabulary. So that can be used in business meetings, right? And
Yeah, it really can.
so yeah,
In just a regular conversation with your pals.
exactly.
But having said that expression, do you have a like favorite expression or just an expression that you want to share with us now
Well, I've got
that's
loads.
football
How
related?
much time do we have? I mean, I love them all.
We have an hour. Go. No.
No, what you know what I quite like cliches. I find them hilarious. You know, cliches are looked down on, right? When somebody can't talk very well, a typical cliche is the footballer themselves who are being interviewed after a game, yeah? And they often speak in a clumsy way, and they say obviously, obviously, overuse the word obviously, obviously, like Harry Kane, for example, does that. But then they use these
My overused
cliches,
word is totally. I'm like totally, totally, totally.
right, right. But footballers, they are excellent at this, and they would use phrases like, "It was a game of two halves. Um, we we need to let our feet do the talking, and we'll take it one step at a time, like one game at a time, stuff like that." Right? They say it all the time. It's just so funny because you always hear the same phrases
But
all
I wonder
over.
if they don't even think about it. They're just like they just come out so naturally, you know?
Well, they are useful in a way, right? You don't know what to
They're
say.
getting the point across,
Mm,
but
yeah.
yeah,
But
I think
then
we do
sometimes
say
cliches
some of
become
those.
empty phrases, right? It can happen as well. Like
Yeah.
you use cliches like that, they're no longer sort of
They
they
lose they lose all meaning.
lose their meaning, so to speak. Mm.
Yeah. And okay. Do you have do you commonly use without thinking football phrases, football expressions, football idioms? Do you think that you are like these footballers that you mentioned that just kind of like throw out
Ugh. I'm an
because you're
English
around
teacher.
it so much and it's so much a
Yeah,
part of your life? I just wonder if maybe unconsciously
that's
you
true. But I'm an English teacher, you see. So maybe I'm
that
more
changes it.
I'm an I'm a football fan. I'm an English teacher, but I think
Well, wait, which
most of
would
the
you say
time I
first?
teach, right?
Football fan first or English teacher first?
Mm, yeah, it's
Oh,
hard,
tie
right?
game. Okay.
Yeah, I guess I can't decide. I'm both. And yeah, so that's it.
Yes.
Forgot
Winning.
forgot my point. I lost my train of thought. Actually, I'll be honest, I
Today
lost my
is
train
brought
of
to
thought.
you by Memory Lapses. Thanks to Vickie.
Yeah, this is what happens to you when you head the ball too often, guys. Yeah. So
There
I'm
you
quite
go.
tall, so
Got
I
to get
used to
your head in the game. I
yeah,
was trying to think if I could think of um any
head idioms.
references for other sports. I had said the 9 yards thing earlier,
Hmm.
which is American football one, but I was trying to think of knock it out of the park. That's a nice baseball one that people use. But I'm not I wonder if there's any rugby ones. I don't know that I know
Yeah, there are
any
loads.
rugby
Like
expressions.
to be on a sticky wicket, like if you are into cricket and
But
so many from all different
uh,
sports.
Well, I really enjoyed getting to chat with you about all things football and more because we touched on a lot of topics here. But I hope that everybody will head on over to Zdenek's YouTube channel and specific because he has his podcast over there for you to check out. Or you can also check out the Footglish. Sorry, you can check out the Footglish podcast wherever you
Wherever,
enjoy
yeah.
listening to
Basically,
podcasts.
yeah, thank you so much, Vickie. Basically, the podcast, not all episodes are on the YouTube channel because some of them I may have recorded only as an audio, right? If
Well, I had noticed,
yeah,
so okay,
yeah.
gotcha.
But
So
most of
now,
most
so
of
now I
them
know,
are
got to look over
true. But
on
yeah,
Spotify or Apple or I noticed the Spain one, ebooks had the episodes as well. So yeah,
really,
it's really
wow.
every yeah.
Okay.
Because I was like, how'd you get that on there? I can't figure out how to get mine on there. Oh,
I definitely
you have
didn't
magic
put it
powers.
there. So I think something automatic happened, in the world of
Yeah,
the
something
internet.
automatic
Yeah.
worked correctly for one.
Yes.
So, well, thank you so much for coming and chatting. And for everybody who's watching and listening along, please remember to subscribe and leave a comment so that the algorithm can show this to more people and everybody can
Exactly.
enjoy time with Vickie and with the Footglish podcast. Oh my gosh, my words are starting to spin. So that's how you know it's time to sign off. Thanks so much, Zdenek.
Thank you, Vickie. It was lovely to be here.
Bye.
Bye.